This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there.
From Innistrad to Shadowmoor, what spooky top 10 does Nitsuhone have in store?
Hello everyone, I'm Nitsuhone, and it is Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. It is also October, and that means this is yet another Halloween-inspired edition of MTG Top 10. This time we're looking at a subjective topic. Earlier in the month I looked at the cards with the spookiest art, and today I'm going to look at the cards that have the spookiest flavor text. These are cards that have expertly written lines of flavor text that make the cards extra spooky. Obviously, these picks are based entirely on my opinion, and in this video I'll explain what exactly about these flavor texts creeps me out. Alright, let's get started with number 10. At number 10, I have the original Scathe Zombies way back from Alpha. Unlike most Magic cards, Scathe Zombies actually has flavor text that is a quotation from real-world literature, something we will see one more time on this list. While most of you know that I have a PhD in history, I also minored in English as an undergraduate and really enjoyed Gothic literature, which shouldn't come as too much of a surprise given how much I like Halloween. In this case, the quote comes from Samuel Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner, an epic poem that I have really loved since reading it in high school. Even though the text here isn't original, the use of such a creepy quote from what is definitely a creepy epic poem is pretty effective. While Rime of the Ancient Mariner precedes the Gothic period of literature, it came near the end of the Romantic period and had a major influence in actually creating the Gothic style that became known for a fascination with the macabre and supernatural. In this poem, a sailor talks about an ill-fated voyage he was on. After he kills an albatross on this voyage, which is a bad omen, the ship encounters all kinds of horrible things. One of the creepy things they encounter is a ghostly ship that has death and something named Nightmare Life and Death playing dice for the souls of the crew. The entire crew has their souls taken from them except the mariner, the narrator. After their bodies have collapsed from no longer having a soul, they are reanimated, which the flavor text on Scathe Zombies is quoting. After being reanimated, they mindlessly operate the boat and get the mariner home. While the word zombie wasn't in the lexicon in the late 18th century, these figures sound a lot like them, and the description is certainly eerie, and every time I see this Scathe Zombies flavor text, it reminds me of that moment in Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is well suited to appearing in one of Magic's very first zombies. At number 9, it is Kindercatch. In German, Kinder means child. That's where we get the word kindergarten from. In other words, this creepy creature captures children. This card is definitely a nice combination of the art, name, and flavor text, all creating a pretty frightening image about this creature and how it complicates the lives of people on Innistrad. In the art, you can see that the strange bag that the Kindercatch is dragging is filled with children, and that's a creepy enough image. It was almost creepy enough to make my top 10 spookiest art list, but I thought the flavor text was even creepier. The flavor text is what really drives home how scary this creature is. Apparently, Kindercatches are such a problem around Kessig that parents have to feed their children bitter and potentially poisonous things like wormwood. This makes it sound like going into the woods is a death sentence for children because of these creatures, and all anyone can do about it is hope that the child isn't palatable, so the Kindercatch gives up on eating it. There's really no way to stop from getting caught in the first place, you just have to not taste good. What I think is really scary about this card is that it isn't really an if that you encounter these things, it's apparently commonplace, and that's some scary stuff. At number 8 is the original Urborg, and the other card that uses a quotation from real-world literature. In this case, it is from one of the masters of the Gothic style, Edgar Allan Poe, someone who, incidentally, was directly influenced by the work of Coleridge. The poem that is quoted here is The City in the Sea. This poem describes a city that is ruled over, as this quote tells you, by the personification of death, a city which he describes as eventually sinking into hell. Poe's eerie description of the city is something that is hard to shake because he goes into so much detail about it. This is an excellent and flavorful use of a real-world quote because it helps someone understand Urborg through the lens of real-world literature. Like Poe's city, Urborg is a super creepy island. During the Phyrexian invasion, it is transported into a volcano, as the art here indicates, which is a nice parallel with Poe's city eventually descending into hell. At number 7, we have another card from Innistrad, Uninvited Geist. Like with Kindercatch, Uninvited Geist does a good job of helping you understand the challenges that are encountered on the plane of Innistrad. Every moment of your life is like a horror movie. Your children could be taken from you by a Kindercatch, as we already saw, and sometimes, late at night, you might also hear a frightening spirit knock on your door. The fear of a stranger or monster entering into your home is a very relatable and visceral one, and it is captured by this card. The flavor text advises people what to do when that happens. Just ignore it. That's not too scary, right? I mean, the thing can't get into the house if you don't let it in, so what is there to be afraid of? If you ignore it, you're fine, right? But the Geist is a double-faced card who transforms into Unimpeded Trespasser, a frightening creature whose flavor text note he doesn't need to knock, it's just a formality. And judging from the card's name, you never know when you might find one of these scary things in your house, and who knows what it's going to do once it's there. At number 6, I have Twins of Maurer Estate. A common trope in many horror movies is super scary and or creepy children. There's just something extra frightening about a child who is a zombie or possessed by a demon or, like in this case, is a vampire. Part of what makes them extra creepy is it is a human instinct to help lost children or scared children. You want to help them find their parents. And that's what poor Rhaeg the Wandering Monk tried to do for these kids. The flavor text tells us his last words, so obviously the Twins of Maurer Estate devoured the poor guy, and all he wanted to do was help them. At number 5, it is Soul Feast, specifically the 10th edition version of it. It is the only one that has the particular flavor text that makes this list. It provides a quote from a Sengir vampire who is explaining how it is they view mortals whose blood they devour, describing blood as sliding wetly beneath the skin. That's a really frightening description to us humans who don't think about our fellow man in such terms. For the vampire, the human is basically just a walking juice box filled with their favorite juice. While the quote here is great and definitely frightens and disgusts anyone who looks at it, there is one thing that does bother me a little here. The card is called Soul Feast, and the quote talks about consuming blood. Last time I checked, bloods and souls aren't exactly the same thing. Still, despite the weird flavor fail, the flavor text here is super spooky. At number 4, I have Cloistered Youth, which presents us with another creepy child story. In this case, what's happening seems akin to an exorcism situation where the child is possessed by a demon. The youth looks normal enough on the front side. She's afraid and seems to be crying, but that is kind of par for the course on Innistrad, right? The flavor text is what really makes the situation scary though, since the girl's father doesn't just suspect something is up, he seems to know that the cloistered youth is no longer his daughter because she's been talking in her sleep, and the way she is talking is laid out for us pretty clearly since it tells us she is pleading, shrieking, and snarling. All pretty creepy things for someone to be doing in their sleep. The father, of course, proves to be right, since the youth can transform into Unholy Fiend, where a horror has apparently taken over the girl. As is typical in most tropes like this, the Fiend has taken over the girl's body and uses her knowledge and memories to terrorize her loved ones. The flavor text here is well done because it really conveys for you the horror that this family is going through in losing their daughter. It's a sad and frightening story. At number 3, I have Brood of Cockroaches. If you watched my video on the spookiest art, you know I have a hard time with some insects, but for the most part, it's stinging insects, especially wasps. Normally, cockroaches don't bother me that much, and the art alone here isn't enough to freak me out. A swarm of cockroaches is gross, but the art doesn't give me sort of a visceral reaction of fright and disgust, but the flavor text does. By comparing the swarm of cockroaches here to real-life things, it makes this nasty brood of cockroaches really come alive. Walking on these cockroaches is apparently like walking on a bed of 1,000 olives in an earthquake of subtle force. Yeah, no thank you. I don't really want to feel the disgusting sensation that is described here, so let's move to number 2. At number 2, I have Creepy Doll. Horror stories about creepy children freak me out, but so do stories about creepy possessed dolls. Obviously, this is a common trope in fiction, which I think really entered the mainstream in the Twilight Zone episode Living Doll, about a doll named Taki Tina who goes to such lengths to protect her owner that she eventually murders her abusive father. While the doll is super creepy in that, it does at least seem to have the best interest of the child in mind. Then there are, of course, the more well-known Child's Play movies, where Chucky is a living doll who just wants to kill everyone, pretty much. Both of these things are super creepy. Seeing a child's plaything who's supposed to look like a human, who has sentience and is capable of violence is just a spooky thing. One of the things that makes them extra creepy is that they can just hide in plain sight because who would ever suspect a toy? So yeah, Creepy Doll invokes all of that and has amazing flavor text to really sell you on how, well, creepy this creature is. The doll apparently disappeared with some scissors and murdered a town magistrate. Hard to know from that information whether the doll is more Talkie Tina or Chucky, but either way, it really creeps me out. And at number 1, it is Thought Scour. Sort of like with Soul Feast, the really creepy thing here is hearing someone talk so coldly about human life. Obviously, Stitchers have no problem converting people into their zombie servants, but hearing Geralf so coldly talk about the process, which we can only assume is used to rid the person of their sentience and personality, is pretty awful. He talks about injecting some type of liquid into the brainstem of the individual, and he lets us know how much he enjoys the suffering of people he operates on. Not cool, Geralf. Not cool at all. Well, those are my picks for the 10 creepiest flavor texts in all of Magic. In the comments, let me know what flavor text you think is the scariest. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Those things really help me out, and if you're really feeling generous, you can check out my Patreon, where every contribution you make will be used to continue to improve the quality of videos on this channel. Thanks for watching.